This series begins by introducing a beautiful woman named So Jung-won, who works as an investigative journalist and hosts a TV program that uncovers mysterious cases. As a journalist dealing with major violations, Jung-won often finds herself involved in various news scandals involving high-ranking officials in Korea. One of the cases Jung-won is currently handling is a bribery scandal involving a council member named Mr. Mo. The broadcast of the investigation incites the anger of the council member, leading him to devise a vicious plan for revenge. One night, as Jung-won is about to investigate the case involving the council member, she unexpectedly sees a body hanging out of a window before reaching the location. Shocked by the sight, Jung-won immediately rushes into the building to confirm that the woman is truly dead. Shortly after, Kim Tae-han, a police detective, arrives at the crime scene and takes Jung-won to the police station. At that moment, Jung-won is questioned and claims that she was merely passing by and knew nothing about the incident. To everyone's surprise, the body found turns out to be Jin Myung-suk, a housemaid who worked at Mr. Mo's house. According to Mr. Mo, his housemaid had taken the day off before being found dead. Due to Myung-suk's death, Mr. Mo, who dislikes Jung-won for exposing his past case, exacerbates the situation by accusing her of being the perpetrator. Although she was only questioned, the incident has left Jung-won traumatized. She even sought treatment from a psychiatrist to address her mental health issues and make peace with her past. It turned out Jung-won also has childhood trauma, where she witnessed her father's death. Her father was a crime journalist who became one of the victims while covering a major case. Worse yet, to this day, Jung-won doesn't know the identity of the person who killed her father. In her personal life, Jung-won is married to a man named Sol Woo-jae, who is the son of Mr. Punho, one of the most influential conglomerates in Korea. However, their relationship suddenly becomes strained when Jung-won brings the council member's scandal to the media. This is particularly troubling since Mr. Punho and Mr. Mo are close friends who often collaborate in business matters. The following day, Jung-won is investigating material for her TV show. She is seen being followed by a beautiful actress who claims to be a huge fan of Jung-won as the host of the crime show. She also shares that she is currently dating a man who has the same profession as Jung-won's husband, none other than a writer. The couple is even planning to marry soon and hopes that Jung-won can attend as a guest. A month later, Jung-won meets Cha Eun-se again, but this time at the actress's apartment. Since their first meeting, Eun-se has exhibited some suspicious behavior. Not only does she wear a necklace identical to Jung-won's, but she also mentions that she has collected all of Woo-jae's books. Eun-se goes further by claiming that she and Woo-jae have been in a serious relationship for quite some time. What's worse, Eun-se also confesses that she is pregnant with Woo-jae's child and that the two of them are planning to get married soon. Upon hearing this, Jung-won dismisses it as the delusions of an overly obsessed fan of Woo-jae, though deep down, she feels deeply uneasy and is eager to find proof of whether her husband is indeed having an affair. One day, by chance, Jung-won sees Woo-jae going to a counseling clinic. Jung-won suspects that her husband is truly in the process of getting a divorce in order to marry the actress. However, in her distressed state, Jung-won decides to visit her therapist, only to find out that the therapist has relocated. Following a clue from a text message, Jung-won heads to the new clinic location. However, Jung-won suddenly arrives at an empty building that doesn't seem to be her regular clinic. When she tries to enter, Jung-won instead finds a woman covered in blood who turns out to be Eun-se. Jung-won tries to hide her fear upon seeing her lifeless body. Although Jung-won wants to call emergency services, her boss calls first, asking her to host the show. Before leaving the scene, Jung-won quickly takes out her phone and snaps a photo of Eun-se's body as evidence. After finishing her work at the office, Jung-won plans to visit a psychiatrist named Dr. Yoon-young for a consultation. However, she changes her mind when she notices bloodstains on her sleeve. Panicking, Jung-won rushes home to wash the stain before her husband notices. Shortly after, Woo-jae returns home, but he is drunk. At that moment, he repeatedly apologizes, claiming that he drank too much due to work stress. Whatever was troubling Woo Jae at the time seemed related to his affair with Eun-se. The next day, Detective Tae-han and the police receive a report about the death of an actress named Eun-se. After examining the crime scene, they conclude that Eun-se's death has many similarities with the death of Mr. Mo's maid, Jin Myung-suk. During the investigation, one officer finds a necklace clutched in Eun-se's hand, which is identical to the one owned by Jung-won. The following day, Woo Jae has recovered and tries to forget about the previous night's events. Woo Jae also apologizes to Jung-won for not coming home earlier due to his workload. To make up for his guilt, Woo Jae surprises Jung-won, making her smile again. However, tension arises once more when news of Eun-se's death spreads across various media outlets. Jung-won, who had been happy, suddenly becomes panicked, recalling that she was also at the crime scene that night. Jung-won feels incredibly guilty for ignoring the incident and not calling emergency services immediately. With this guilt, Jung-won goes to the police station to inquire about the progress of Eun-se's death investigation. However, Jung-won receives no answers as Tae-han refuses to provide any information. Not ready to give up, Jung-won asks whether it's true that Eun-se died while pregnant. Upon arriving home, Jung-won can no longer contain her emotions. Without hesitation, she accuses her husband of having an affair that led to Eun-se becoming pregnant. Not stopping at words, Jung-won also shows an ultrasound result, claiming that the child Eun-se was carrying is Woo Jae's baby. Feeling cornered, Woo Jae tries to find an alibi and denies all of his wife's accusations. Even when asked about his visit to Yoon Young's clinic, Woo Jae explains that he went to see a psychiatrist because he was suffering from depression. After the argument the previous night, Jung-won wakes up feeling uneasy when she realizes that her necklace is missing. Unable to find it, Jung-won asks Woo Jae about it, but his strange expression only deepens her suspicion. Not wanting to escalate the situation, Jung-won tries to trust her husband and promises to spend more time together. Jung-won then embraces him lovingly, though her doubts continue to linger in her heart. At work, Jung-won meets with her boss to discuss the case of Eun-se's death. It is known that she has been assigned as the journalist who will investigate the celebrity's death for her TV program. However, Jung-won cannot provide further information since the police are still processing the crime scene. On the other hand, Tae-han conducts an investigation at the victim's home and finds a cake box neatly stored in the fridge. This discovery leads him to think that someone might have visited her home before the murder occurred. After reviewing CCTV footage, they are shocked to see that it was Jung-won who brought the cake. With this information, Detective Tae-han starts to suspect that something is amiss with Jung-won, especially since she has been caught on camera at the scene at suspicious times. Tae-han then meets with Jung-won to ask about her encounter with Eun-se. At that moment, Jung-won can only reply nervously that they had personal business and that Eun-se had invited her first. A few days later, Jung-won is asked to visit her father-in-law's house with her husband, where they are invited for a dinner party also attended by Mr. Mo. Besides the dinner, Mr. Punho instructs his son-in-law to apologize to Mr. Mo, but Woo Jae immediately defends his wife, saying that no apology is necessary. Feeling deeply insulted by Woo Jae's words, Mr. Mo reveals that he knew Jung-won's biological father, who died tragically because of his work. At the same time, the investigation into Eun-se's death continues. At that time, Tae-han uncovers a shocking new fact. Apparently, in the days leading up to her death, Eun-se was frequently calling a special number, which turned out to be Woo Jae's. Meanwhile, Jung-won also discovers evidence that her husband was in the same building as Eun-se on the night of the incident. Without hesitation, Tae-han suddenly arrives at Woo Jae's home and informs him that he must come with him to the police station. Apparently, Tae-han wants to question him about his relationship with Eun-se, as he was not only present in the same building at the time of the incident, but also the only man frequently contacted by Eun-se. At the police station, Tae-han questions Woo Jae about many things, including the novel he wrote. In the novel, Woo Jae describes the murder of a woman by stabbing her in the abdomen, which closely resembles the circumstances of Eun-se's death. However, Woo Jae claims that the girl's death has nothing to do with the story in his novel. As for his presence at Leader's Palace, Wu Jie admits that he went there to buy Chinese food, but was unaware that Eun-se was being murdered at the time. Wu Jie also firmly denies the accusations of infidelity and Eun-se's pregnancy, which is suspected to be his doing. At Jung-won's workplace, rumors about Mr. Mo frequently sponsoring Eun-se are now widespread. However, this doesn't affect Jung-won much, as her focus is currently only on the future of her marriage. After some time, Wu Jie meets with Jung-won and begins explaining why he was at the Chinese restaurant when Eun-se was killed. However, as they argue, Jung-won's boss arrives, assuming that they are fighting. Uncomfortable with the situation, Jung-won asks her husband to leave, promising to discuss the matter further at home. To uncover the truth behind Eun-se's murder, Jung-won approaches a man named Gum-se, who turns out to be Eun-se's older brother. Known for his gambling habits and frequently squandering his sister's money. However, when interviewed, Gum-se responds coldly and refuses to answer any questions. Additionally, Gum-se remains tight-lipped about his sister's death, forcing Tae-han to intervene. The only information Gum-se reveals is that his sister had once planned to retire from the entertainment industry. While driving home, Gum-se is seen calling Mr. Mo. It is unclear what their relationship is, but rumors suggest that Mr. Mo often sponsored Eun-se. A few days later, Jung-won and her husband go to the police station to receive the DNA test results. The test reveals that the DNA of the child Eun-se was carrying does not match Wu Jie's, clearing both Detective Tae-han's and Jung-won's suspicions. Therefore, the couple immediately returns home. At that moment, Jung-won briefly asks her husband about the other phone he owns, and Wu Jie casually replies that it is just a backup. The next day, Jung-won asks one of the therapy clinic staff about the address that was previously sent to her. The woman replies that she sent the correct number and doesn't know how the mistake happened. Meanwhile, news about Eun-se's affair with Wu Jie emerges, accompanied by photos of them together. Consequently, Wu Jie's father inquires whether the rumors about his son's infidelity, as reported in the media, are true. However, Wu Jie quickly speaks up, denying the allegations and claiming that someone is deliberately trying to ruin him. Unexpectedly, suspicions about Wu Jie are confirmed when Jung-won sees a video of him being intimate with Eun-se. At home, Jung-won immediately vents her anger at her husband after viewing the video of the affair with Eun-se and is extremely disappointed because Wu Jie continues to deny it. Despite the overwhelming evidence, cornered by his own lies, Wu Jie finally admits to having an affair with Eun-se. He explains that he did it because he felt lonely and wanted to be loved more. Additionally, he cites that Jung-won's busyness as the reason for his decision to engage in the illicit relationship with another woman. Elsewhere, Detective Tae-han and his colleague review footage showing Wu Jie arguing with a waitress at a cafe. The cafe owner is revealed to be Su-rin, who turns out to be Mr. Mo's daughter. The footage also provides with evidence that Wu Jie did not go to the building to pick up food, but rather to meet with his lover deliberately. Not long after, Jung-won decides to leave home and stay at a hotel to calm herself and avoid her husband. Wu Jie, on the other hand, is seen going to Eun-se's apartment, followed by Gum-se. At that moment, Gum-se tries to blackmail Wu Jie using his sister's death. However, Wu Jie turns the situation around by threatening to release photos of Eun-se's injuries caused by her brother's abuse. With those photos, the police would undoubtedly suspect Gum-se of killing his own sister. Haunted by the tragedy of Eun-se's death and unable to cope with the panic attack she experiences, Jung-won visits Yoon-young for a consultation. Jung-won then shares what she's been going through, but Yoon-young dismisses it as mere hallucinations, considering that Jung-won witnessed Myung-suk's blood-covered corpse. Feeling somewhat calmer, Jung-won then discusses her husband's affair with Yoon-young. Therefore, Jung-won vows to get back at Wu Jie so that he will feel the heartbreak that she is currently enduring. Some time later, Tae-han is seen interrogates Jung-won about her necklace found at the scene of Eun-se's murder. However, she firmly denies being at the location or committing any crime. Despite her denial, Tae-han asks Jung-won to write down everything she did on the day Eun-se died. From this conversation, it seems that Tae-han still doesn't fully trust Jung-won and wants to investigate further. Shortly after, at home, Jung-won reviews the photos of Eun-se's corpse that she took some time ago. However, in all the angles she captured, Jun doesn't see Eun-se holding a necklace similar to hers. With this oddity, Jung-won then asks her informant, named Zeus, to obtain crime scene photos from the police. Strangely, in the police photos, Eun-se's body is shown clutching a necklace, but without a pendant, indicating that someone must have deliberately placed a necklace there after Jung-won left the scene. Regarding the necklace in Eun-se's murder case, Taehan uncovers a new fact. Eun-se indeed owned a necklace identical to Jung-won's. Long before her death, Eun-se had already purchased the necklace and didn't steal it from Jung-won. Now convinced that the jewelry doesn't belong to Jung-won, Taehan and the police team are focusing on finding the mysterious woman seen with Woo-jae at Leader's Palace that night. During the ongoing investigation, Woo-jae visits Taehan at the police station. Woo-jae demands an explanation as to why his wife was interrogated. Therefore, Taehan explains that Jung-won is suspected of being the one who killed Eun-se, evidenced by the discovery of her necklace at the crime scene. Not long after, at the news station, Jung-won's boss mentions that they might no longer continue airing Nothing Uncovered. This is because the key informant, Jung-won herself, has been accused of involvement in the case. At the same time, Jung-won isn't sure when the program will actually be canceled, but she is currently in a difficult situation as more people turn against her. Feeling unwilling to accept that her show might be canceled, Jung-won goes to the CEO's house of the television station. However, she doesn't manage to meet with the executives and instead encounters Ji-ho, who informs her that his boss doesn't want to see anyone at the moment. Shortly after, Jung-won receives a call saying that her father-in-law is a close friend of the CEO. With this information, Jung-won then visits Chairman Pun-ho and asks him to speak with the CEO. Fortunately, Mr. Pun-ho agrees to persuade his friend, but on the condition that Jung-won stays by Woo-jae's side until his case is resolved. At the police station, Taehan discovers that Eun-se received a threat from a secretary named Ho-sung 3 days before her death. Wasting no time, Taehan and his colleague go to question the secretary, who tells Taehan that he once saw Eun-se being threatened by a stalker. Seeing her in danger, Secretary Ho-sung tried to help, so he exchanged phone numbers with her, and even had a meal together. Meanwhile, Eun-se's manager contacts Taehan and reveals that before her death, Eun-se was considering hiring a bodyguard. The manager also mentions the stalker who had been persistently harassing her recently. Upon investigation, the stalker turns out to be a security employee at Leader's Palace named Kim Min-chul. In recent times, Min-chul had been continuously approaching Eun-se, claiming to be her biggest fan. Suspecting him further, Taehan tracks down Min-chul and successfully apprehends him. During questioning, Min-chul reveals that he was a schoolmate of Woo-jae and that they were close because he frequently borrowed money from him. Following her father-in-law's request, Jung-won makes a public statement that she and Woo-jae are not getting divorced. Jung-won also promises to soon reveal the real culprit behind Eun-se's murder, which has implicated her name. After making this statement, the show Nothing Uncovered is allowed to continue, although many of her colleagues express their disapproval. On the other hand, Taehan meets with Jung-won in her hotel room, demanding an explanation for why she lied about Woo-jae. Taehan even suggests that this might all be part of a plan between the two to eliminate Eun-se. During their conversation, Taehan accidentally spots a photo of Eun-se's body on Jung-won's laptop. However, Jung-won quickly closes the laptop as if trying to hide something from Taehan. Besides the photo, Taehan also notices a red coat in her room, identical to the one worn by the mysterious woman seen with Woo-jae when entering Leader's Palace. It's unclear whether the woman Taehan suspects is Jung-won, but he becomes increasingly suspicious of her involvement in Eun-se's murder case. While collecting her belongings at home, Jung-won meets Woo-jae and tells her that he has now joined his father's company, which means Mr. Pun-ho will help her. At that moment, Woo-jae also suggests that Jung-won not return to the hotel and instead spend the night at home, even if only for one night. Hearing this, Jung-won agrees but chooses to sleep on the sofa. Later, while Woo-jae is asleep, Jung-won searches for something and finds suspicious but is caught by her husband. Jung-won then explains that she was only looking for one of her flash drives. Afterward, she goes to the parking area and plants a tracking device on Woo-jae's car. The next day, Jung-won tells Woo-jae that she wants to give their relationship another chance, though in reality, she plans to use this opportunity to investigate him regarding Eun-se's death. Having set up surveillance cameras, Jung-won can listen to all of her husband's conversations, including those involving his connection to a mysterious woman. In one recording, Woo-jae instructs someone to keep a significant event they experienced a secret. While still interrogating her husband, Jung-won receives a phone call and steps outside to take it. However, as she is about to leave, she notices a red coat hanging on the clothes rack, which she realizes isn't hers. Around the same time, Taehan sends her a CCTV recording that shows Woo-jae at a cafe with a woman wearing a red coat. It turns out that Yoon-young is the woman in the red coat who was with Woo-jae that night. They were captured on CCTV just before Eun-se was found dead. To confirm her suspicions, Jung-won meets with Hae-won, a nurse at Yoon-young's clinic. At that moment, Jung-won intentionally gets Hae-won drunk to extract information about Yoon-young and Woo-jae. In her drunken state, Hae-won reveals many things, including the fact that Eun-se was also once a patient of Yoon-young's clinics. Additionally, Yoon-young always recorded all consultation sessions without asking for permission first. This piques Jung-won's curiosity, and she attempts to persuade Hae-won to retrieve the recording files from Eun-se's consultation sessions. Jung-won hopes that these recordings will reveal the connection between Yoon-young, Eun-se, and Woo-jae. Some time later, at the police station, Taehan and his colleague are interrogating Min-chul about Eun-se's death. They do not immediately accuse Min-chul of blackmailing Woo-jae over his affair with Eun-se. However, Min-chul denies all the accusations, claiming that he was merely an admirer of Eun-se. On the other hand, Yoon-young informs Woo-jae that Jung-won installed a surveillance camera in their old apartment. Apparently, Yoon-young knows this because she is currently living in that apartment at Woo-jae's request. Yoon-young also mentions that Jung-won is aware that Woo-jae visited Eun-se before she was found dead. It turned out, a few hours after Eun-se's death, Jung-won also visited the clinic with blood stains on her sleeve, which, according to Yoon-young, could very well be Eun-se's blood. Not long after, Jung-won is seen visiting Woo-jae's family home and enters her husband's old room. There, Jung-won finds a photo of Woo-jae and Yoon-young from their school days. After seeing the photo, Jung-won becomes convinced that her husband's relationship with Yoon-young is more than just a friendship. At the police station, Taehan is questioned by Ji-ho about the detective's relationship with Jung-won, but he remains silent and refrains from giving any comments. Taehan then visits the grave of a policeman named Cha Jin-woo. It seems that the deceased had a connection with Jung-won, as she is also seen at the site, and the two acknowledge each other. In a quiet moment, Taehan suddenly asks Jung-won to apologize to him. However, Jung-won clearly refuses the request, as she believes that she has done nothing wrong. From their interaction, the reason behind Taehan's statement remains a mystery. Shortly after, Jung-won returns home and meets her husband, who doesn't seem pleased with her presence. Without any small talk, Woo-jae questions her about the blood-stained clothes she wore when she visited Yoon-young's clinic. Additionally, he suspects that his wife killed Eun-se out of jealousy. Outraged by the accusation, Jung-won slaps her husband, stating that they are indeed suspicious of each other at this point. The next day, Jung-won and Woo-jae attend the opening of a foundation. At that moment, many high-ranking officials from South Korea are present at the event, including Taehan. Among all the guests, the most intriguing is Yoon-young, who attended the event at Jung-won's invitation. It turns out that Jung-won deliberately arranged for her husband and Yoon-young to meet, even though they pretended not to know each other. During the event, Jung-won receives a message from Hae-won saying that she has copied all of Eun-se's consultation sessions, which Jung-won plans to use to corner Yoon-young in the middle of the foundation's opening event. During the session with reporters, Ji-ho tries to stir up trouble by bringing up Eun-se. Not wanting to raise suspicion, Jung-won states that she will cover the investigation in her program. Additionally, Jung-won also hints that before her death, Eun-se was attacked by someone under mysterious circumstances. It's unclear who the perpetrator is, but Jung-won actually suspects one of the guests at the event. After the event, Taehan invites Woo-jae to meet and discuss the woman in the red coat who was seen with him some time ago. Taehan also asks about Jung-won's connection to Muon, a city also linked to Yoon-young. Hearing this, Woo-jae refuses to answer any of Taehan's questions, especially about his past. Not willing to give up, Taehan tries to provoke Woo-jae, eventually causing him to lose his temper. Woo-jae even assaults Taehan, an altercation that Jung-won witnesses as she arrives to break it up, albeit too late. At the same time, Yoon-young watches the three of them from a distance with a suspicious gaze. Several months after Myung-suk's death, it is revealed that her husband was involved in a chemical factory fire. After her husband's death, Myung-suk began getting close to Mr. Mo and became his assistant. Whatever her intentions were, she was eventually killed, and the culprit remains unknown to this day. Meanwhile, in the therapy session video, it is mentioned that Yoon-young and Woo-jae attended the same school. In the video, Eun-se also asks if Yoon-young knows someone named Nari, a woman whom Woo-jae frequently mentioned when he was drunk. Eun-se was curious because, at that time, Woo-jae even cried when he mentioned Nari's name. After watching the video, Jung-won searches for photos of Woo-jae from his school days in Muon. Wasting no time, Jung-won heads to that city to find out the truth. However, during her journey, Jung-won realizes that someone is following her. Therefore, Jung-won briefly confronts the stalker, only to discover that the man is Taehan. It turns out that Taehan was also heading to the same city to investigate Myung-suk's ex-husband, Jin-soo. Since they're heading to the same city, they decide to travel together, even though they have different missions. Upon arriving in the city where her husband spent his youth, Jung-won gathers a lot of important information. One key detail is that Min-chul is also from the same town as Woo-jae. To uncover the truth, Jung-won visits Muon High School, where she pretends that she wants to create a surprise video for her husband. At that moment, Jung-won also meets with the principal. According to the principal, Woo-jae was very popular back then, but he doesn't know if Woo-jae was close to Yoon-young. Jung-won also learns that Min-chul was a troublesome student, as the principal recalls that Min-chul once had a crush on a female classmate named Nari. However, after being rejected, Min-chul attempted to do the unthinkable, but was saved by Woo-jae. From this story, Jung-won finally discovers that Nari is the girl in the photo with Woo-jae and Yoon-young. However, it turns out that Nari was declared dead a few years ago in a chemical factory fire. To gather more evidence, Taehan goes to Woo-jae's school while Jung-won meets Jin-soo's sibling. They later meet up and share a meal at a place they once visited. When it starts to rain, Taehan pulls Jung-won into shelter and admits that he feels sorry to see her struggling in life. That night, Jung-won and Taehan drink together and share stories. As time passed by, Taehan gets drunk, so Jung-won has to help him to his room. At the same time, Woo-jae calls and unintentionally hears Taehan's voice in the background. During the phone, Woo-jae only asks when his wife will return home. Meanwhile, Yoon-young is seen enjoying a glass of wine alone when Woo-jae suddenly arrives. Intentionally, Yoon-young shows a photo of Jung-won with dirty clothes, claiming that the stains are Eun-se's blood. It turned out, Yoon-young plans to use the photo to threaten Woo-jae, but he remains unconvinced and insists on defending his wife. The next day, as they prepare to return to Seoul, Jung-won insists on driving, as Taehan was still recovering from a heavy night of drinking. During a rest stop, they both realize that the factory fire is the link connecting all these events. Therefore, they immediately visit the detective in charge of the fire case. By chance, they find a broken watch at the scene, which turns out to belong to Nari. From this discovery, Taehan starts to suspect that the perpetrator behind all these incidents is the same person. On their way home, Taehan realizes that they are being followed by an unknown person. A brief chase soon ensues before Taehan discovers that the person following them is Ho Sung from the councilman's office. On the other hand, Woo-jae is seen watching an old video from his honeymoon with Jung-won. A little later, Jung-won arrives, and Woo-jae asks where she has been for the past 2 days. Instead of answering, Jung-won remains silent, as if she doesn't want her personal matters to be disturbed by her husband, which eventually leads to an argument. At that moment, Jung-won expresses that everything about Woo-jae deeply bothers her. However, Woo-jae insists on not giving up on their relationship. The next morning, Woo-jae finds Jung-won asleep in the study. Without his wife's knowledge, Woo-jae secretly checks her bag and discovers a food receipt from a diner in Muwon. Woo-jae then calls his father and asks him to find out why Jung-won went to that place. It turns out that Jung-won also realizes that Woo-jae saw the receipt in her bag, so she openly tells her husband that she went to Muwon to investigate Eun-se's case. At her workplace, Ji-ho offers a job to the cameraman and writer who are in the same division as Jung-won. Ji-ho hopes that the two will join his team, as Jung-won's program is on the brink of cancellation. This conversation is overheard by Jung-won, which frustrates her even more, leading her to consider taking a tranquilizer in the bathroom. After that, a writer approaches Jung-won and promises that she will never leave her, no matter what. Later that afternoon, Jung-won is waiting for her husband to pick her up for a dinner with her in-laws. By chance, Jung-won sees her boss getting into Mr. Mo's car. The two seem to be having a serious conversation, with Mr. Mo appearing to threaten Jung-won's boss. At the same time, Tae-han, who also arrives at the scene, sees Jung-won getting into Woo-jae's car. Tae-han then considers calling out to her, but decides against it. Shortly afterward, Tae-han receives a phone call from a friend informing him that Yoon-young's car was seen at Myung-suk's house on the day of her death. In short, Woo-jae and Jung-won arrive at Mr. Pun-ho's house. At that moment, Mr. Pun-ho tells Jung-won to find a scapegoat if she can't identify the real culprit. After that, Mr. Pun-ho also scolds his son and daughter-in-law because the company's stock price has plummeted due to rumors circulating about the two of them. Therefore, Mr. Pun-ho then asks Jung-won to join his company, but Jung-won continues to refuse. Unfortunately, Jung-won's refusal angers her father-in-law, who threatens to expose that his son and daughter-in-law are just pretending. The man seems indifferent to the fact that many people will condemn them in the end. Meanwhile, Tae-han goes to meet Yoon-young to interrogate her about her whereabouts during Eun-se's death. Yoon-young admits that Eun-se did leave her clinic, but she doesn't reveal who Eun-se was with. On the other hand, Zeus informs Jung-won that he couldn't find much information about Yoon-young. The informant only discovered a few things, one of which is that Yoon-young's clinic is registered under the name Mo Soo-rin, who is the only daughter of Mr. Mo. At Min Chul's house, Detective Tae-han discovers a knife hidden behind a window. Tae-han suspects that the knife might have been used to kill Eun-se. To confirm this, Min Chul is questioned again, but he denies having killed Eun-se. Just like before, Min Chul only admits to being a fan and having followed Eun-se. By chance, Woo-jae learns about Jung-won's past relationship with Tae-han, discovering that they were once lovers who appeared to be deeply in love. Even today, Tae-han still loves Jung-won very much. That same day, Woo-jae actually wants to ask his wife for confirmation, but he is not allowed to meet her as Jung-won still has to work late into the night. Returning to Tae-han, who verifies that the blood on Min Chul's knife matches Eun-se's DNA. Shortly after, Tae-han receives a phone call from Jung-won asking to meet. During their conversation, Tae-han suddenly brings up their past separation, which was actually due to a misunderstanding. Jung-won explains that she was very angry because Tae-han accused her, leading them to break up. At the same time, Woo-jae arrives at Tae-han's house and sees his wife there. Because of this, Woo-jae became extremely upset that Jung-won is working at her ex-lover's house. A fight breaks out between Woo-jae and Tae-han, but Jung-won quickly takes her husband home. Upon arriving home, the couple argues again, with Woo-jae suspects that Jung-won still has feelings for Tae-han. Therefore, Woo-jae asks his wife to explain, but Jung-won simply leaves, claiming she is tired. Not long after, Tae-han is seen following a man who reported Min Chul as a suspect. Because of the man's suspicious behavior, Tae-han stops him along with the taxi that brought him. While searching the man's phone, Tae-han finds many calls from Gum-se. It turns out that Eun-se's older brother is the one who instructed the man to report Min-chul for his sister's death. With this founding, Min-chul is eventually cleared of the accusation involving his idol case. And the police are now searching for the person who deliberately framed Min-chul as the main suspect, none other than Gum-se. Realizing that Taehan suspects Gum-se, Jung-won decides to meet him first to gather information. While talking to Gum-se, a loan shark suddenly arrives to collect the debt. Jung-won then takes this opportunity to search Gum-se's kitchen for knives. At that moment, Jung-won finds a set of red knives that is incomplete. So Jung-won suspects that one of the red knives might be the weapon used to kill Eun-se and was deliberately placed in Min-chul's house. As she is about to leave, Jung-won's attention is drawn to a keychain that looks very familiar. Upon reflection, the keychain resembles one belonging to Barun, a new staff member at the news agency. Although Jung-won initially does not suspect anything about the keychain, seeing Gum-se's shocked reaction when she inquires about it makes her even more suspicious. Jung-won then meets with Taehan again to discuss why Gum-se might want to frame Min-chul. When the conversation turns personal, Jung-won tells Taehan to stop having feelings for her, as she hopes that Taehan will forget about her and move on with someone else. In a different location, Yoon-young is seen repairing a broken bowl. Soon after, Soo-rin arrives and talks about her father's temperamental behavior towards her. Yoon-young then tries to calm Soo-rin. With a mysterious look, Yoon-young promises to always protect her no matter what happens. After that, she gives Soo-rin a small bottle of illegal drugs and asks her to use it. Not long after Soo-rin leaves, Yoon-young receives a patient who turns out to be Jung-won. At the same time, Woo-jae arrives, which was actually planned by Yoon-young, who wants to conduct a couple's therapy session bringing them together. During the therapy session, Yoon-young becomes more aggressive and even admits to having known Woo-jae since high school, where they were very close and even studied abroad together. Yoon-young then recounts that she used to have strong feelings for Woo-jae, but those feelings were unreciprocated as he chose to marry Jung-won. Since then, Yoon-young decided to forget Woo-jae and focus on her clinic. After the consultation, Jung-won returns home and is seen contacting her informant, Zeus. During their conversation, Jung-won suddenly wonders if Zeus has been betraying her, as he knows too much about Jung-won. Even on the night Jung-won found Myung-suk's body, Zeus seemed to have been watching her. At the same time, a mysterious man suddenly approaches Jung-won and immediately restrains her until she loses consciousness. The man who attacked Jung-won turns out to be Gum-se, who did this deliberately because he believes she is the main culprit behind Eun-se's and Myung-suk's deaths. Hearing Jung-won continue to make excuses, Gum-se becomes enraged and sends a video evidence of Myung-suk's death. On that day, Gum-se was ordered by Mr. Mo to monitor the woman. While on watch, Gum-se suddenly hears commotion from inside the apartment. Curious, Gum-se tries to go upstairs and inadvertently sees Myung-suk bleeding and trying to call for help. At the same time, near Myung-suk's body, there is a suitcase full of money which Gum-se immediately takes. Unfortunately, Gum-se immediately leaves, ignoring the woman's pleas for help. Since that time, Gum-se has been curious about who the perpetrator is and the owner of the suitcase filled with money. However, after Gum-se saw Jung-won appearing frightened when seeing the suitcase she hid, Gum-se becomes even more convinced that Jung-won is the culprit. On the other side, Woo-jae is confused and searching for Jung-won, who has not come home since last night. With no other option, Woo-jae then meets Taehan to inquire about his wife's whereabouts, but Taehan claims not to know. The next day, Taehan finds Jung-won's car parked on the side of the road, with the car door is open and the dashboard camera deliberately removed. Taehan suspects that the perpetrator deliberately removed the evidence to prevent it from being traced. After collecting several pieces of evidence, including CCTV footage, Taehan suspects that the perpetrator is Gum-se. Especially from the footage, his car is seen near Jung-won's car before the incident. Meanwhile, Jung-won is trying to escape by cutting the ropes that bind her hands. Under Gum-se's pressure, Jung-won is still forced to admit that she is the one who killed Eun-se and Myung-suk. However, Jung-won remains steadfast in her stance, which enrages Gum-se and leads him to plan to kill her. Fortunately, Jung-won manages to fight back and free herself from her restraints before attacks Gum-se. A struggle ensues before Jung-won successfully escapes to the bathroom, but Gum-se captures Jung-won again and does something even worse to her. In a semi-drunk state, he cruelly chokes Jung-won until she almost runs out of breath. Just as Jung-won is on the brink of death, Tae-han suddenly arrives to rescue her and immediately beats up Gum-se. In a fit of rage, Tae-han chokes Gum-se to make him experience the same suffering that Jung-won endured. After that, Tae-han takes Jung-won and Gum-se to the police station. A short while later, Woo-jae arrives and is visibly panicked upon seeing his wife's condition. Woo-jae actually wants to take Jung-won to the hospital, but Tae-han prohibits it due to the ongoing investigation. Additionally, all medical examination matters can only be handled by the police. That night, Tae-han visits the hospital to inform that Gum-se has confessed to all his crimes, including deliberately abandoning Myung-suk, despite her pleas for help. Tae-han also reveals that Gum-se was used as a tool to frame Jung-won on the orders of Mr. Mo. Moreover, it seems that Zeus, who always called Jung-won, was also deliberately framing her to make her a suspect. The next day, Yoon-young visits Jung-won and shows her a photo of blood on her sleeve. With this evidence, she accuses Jung-won of being the perpetrator who killed Eun-se. In a desperate situation, Woo-jae suddenly arrives and denies that the blood belongs to Eun-se. According to him, at the time of the incident, Jung-won was experiencing a nosebleed, which caused the blood stains on her sleeve. Yoon-young then refutes this alibi and challenges Woo-jae to bring in Detective Tae-han. Not backing down, Woo-jae threatens Yoon-young with exposure of her illegal drug distribution to all her patients, including Woo-jae himself. If this is revealed to Tae-han, Yoon-young's medical license will be revoked. Faced with Woo-jae's threat, Yoon-young is left defenseless. While Jung-won still cannot believe what Yoon-young has done to her husband, including her confession of still having feelings for him. Woo-jae, looking disheveled, then recounts that he was indeed addicted to illegal drugs since studying abroad. However, after meeting Jung-won, the addiction effects disappeared, and Woo-jae stopped using the drugs. Since being released about 2 months ago, Jung-won's necklace suddenly disappeared and was found on Eun-se's body. Because of this, Woo-jae suspects that his wife's necklace was stolen by Yoon-young. Therefore, Woo-jae invites Yoon-young to dinner to prove his suspicion. After being declared healthy, Jung-won immediately goes to work and is searching for Barun. According to Tae-han, Barun has a close connection to Myung-suk because he was frequently asked to transfer money. However, when contacted, the man suddenly vanished, and Jung-won is currently trying to find him at his house. Upon arriving at Barun's house, Jung-won is shocked to find many interconnected photos, including one of Mr. Mo and his daughter. Not stopping there, Jung-won also discovers another fact that Barun is actually Zeus's informant. But unfortunately, Jung-won cannot question him as he vanished when his identity was revealed. The next day, Yoon-young realizes that Woo-jae searched her private drawer and took her flash drive. Feeling betrayed, Yoon-young then visits Tae-han and hands over a photo of Jung-won sitting while holding Eun-se's body. Seeing this, Tae-han tries to verify the authenticity of the photo and attempts to hide it from other police officers to protect Jung-won's reputation. At the same time, Woo-jae visits his wife and informs her that Yoon-young took her necklace, which was placed at the crime scene. Not long after, on a billboard atop a building, there is shocking news about an alleged affair between reporter Jung-won and Detective Tae-han. Overcome with anger, Woo-jae rushes to confront Tae-han. In front of the police station, Woo-jae immediately attacks Tae-han for daring to pursue his wife. Tae-han fights back, and the two engage in a fierce battle. At that moment, Tae-han admits that he deeply loves Jung-won, but she has never reciprocated his feeling and instead chose her husband. Meanwhile, at her office, Jung-won becomes the center of heated discussions due to the scandal, and the show she hosted will no longer be aired. However, Jung-won insists on remaining in the media to uncover Eun-se's death case. On a new show, Jung-won appears as a guest. During the interview, she denies the allegations that she is the one who killed Eun-se. Jung-won also explains that her necklace was stolen from her husband's office and deliberately placed at the crime scene to frame her. Additionally, Jung-won is convinced that the perpetrator has accomplices who also executed Eun-se. After that, the show proceeds smoothly, but before Jung-won can finish speaking, it is abruptly cut off. That night, Jung-won visits Taehan, who is camping. At that moment, she says that Yoon-young does not work alone, but has someone helping her. Jung-won also expresses her feelings to Taehan, who responds with a passionate kiss. Meanwhile, in his office, Woo-jae is suddenly visited by Yoon-young, who aggressively kisses him, but Woo-jae tries to avoid her. It turned out Woo-jae has learned of all of Yoon-young's crimes, including framing his wife and killing Eun-se, because she could not accept that her love was always ignored. To defend his wife, Woo-jae denies the affair news and states that Taehan is the one who has been disturbing Jung-won. Unexpectedly, the next day, Jung-won tells Woo-jae that she truly loves Taehan, which leaves Woo-jae disappointed. Jung-won also explains that she acted this way because Woo-jae started the affair first. Hearing this, Woo-jae is willing to concede, even though Jung-won loves someone else, and he will never let her go. The next morning, Jung-won calls Taehan and provides a series of evidence regarding Yoon-young and Soo-rin in the Eun-se death case. Taehan also seeks to connect Mr. Mo's involvement with Eun-se's death and Nari's death at the chemical plant. From the information obtained, Mr. Mo had previously requested that the case not be extended. At the same time, the police arrived to search Yoon-young's house on charges of drug abuse and illegal sale. Therefore, Yoon-young is taken into custody. During the interrogation room, Taehan focuses on bombarding Yoon-young with various questions about Eun-se's death. Various pieces of evidence such as the necklace and Yoon-young's closeness to Eun-se, as well as the motive of jealousy due to Woo-jae's preference for another woman over herself, increasingly corner Yoon-young. Even Woo-jae, who is present in the interrogation room, contributes by providing testimony that contrasts with Yoon-young's false statements. Initially cornered, Yoon-young uses the weapon of the photo evidence of Jung-won that she had given to Taehan as a defense. However, this evidence is not presented to the investigators. This could backfire on Taehan, as he intentionally hid evidence to protect the woman he loves. Hearing this, Taehan and Woo-jae become agitated. Taehan then asks his colleagues to investigate other evidence related to illegal drug transactions at Yoon-young's clinic, but no evidence is found at the clinic. That night, Woo-jae meets with his father, where they discuss Eun-se's case and its impact on Mr. Punho's company. At that moment, Woo-jae mentions that the case is related to someone close to his father. Meanwhile, Jung-won is seen requesting her colleagues to hold a press conference regarding the news of her recent interview. Shortly after, Jung-won, having returned to her home, is shocked to find that her house has been searched by the police. As the result, Jung-won is arrested as the suspect in Eun-se's murder, while Yoon-young is released as she is declared not guilty. At the same time, Taehan has been dismissed dishonorably by his superiors for hiding crucial evidence for personal reasons. On the other hand, Woo-jae does not want the woman he loves to go to prison, tries to make every effort to free Jung-won. Woo-jae even hires the best lawyer, but unfortunately, the lawyer cannot win the case without the help of Mr. Punho. With no other choice, Woo-jae seeks his father's assistance to free Jung-won, but Mr. Punho is still reluctant due to Woo-jae's refusal to take a position in his company. Mr. Punho also says that if he makes a mistake by intervening in Jung-won's case, it will greatly affect a major project in his company. Jung-won, now considered a suspect, is in the interrogation room. She is also seen as having tarnished the reputation of investigative journalists, despite being known as a firm and idealistic figure. However, it turns out that Jung-won is a criminal. At the same time, Yoon-young, having been released from prison, visits Woo-jae at his home and warns him that she will not allow Jung-won to live. Woo-jae, not wanting his wife to be hurt, kneels before Yoon-young and begs her to free Jung-won. Hearing this, Yoon-young agrees to help, but with one condition, that Woo-jae must be willing to divorce Jung-won and marry her. Therefore, Yoon-young will orchestrate a plan to frame Soo-rin as the culprit, though reluctantly, Woo Jae agrees. That night, Yoon Young wants to celebrate her birthday at Woo Jae's house, so she tries to persuade Woo Jae to spend the night with her. Despite her repeated attempts, Woo Jae always refuses. Heartbroken, Yoon Young claims that Jung-won never loved Woo Jae, and that only Taehan has a place in her heart. Yoon Young then goes to Soo Rin and asks her to place the crime evidence knife in the cremation ashes of Jung-won's father as evidence that she is the perpetrator. At the police station, Taehan, who has been detained, tries to escape as he fights with several police colleagues to break free and eventually manages to escape after jumping out of a window. Following the news from Woo Jae, Taehan also follows Soo Rin, who is placing the knife at the location of Jung-won's father's ashes. So Taehan immediately records this as evidence that Jung-won is innocent. Taehan, previously considered a hindrance to the investigation, is allowed to return to duty after showing the video recording proving that Soo Rin framed Jung-won. At the same time, the police team arrests Soo Rin at the airport as she attempts to flee abroad, while Jung-won is now released from detention. When Jung-won is freed, journalists arrive and immediately question her about why she was suspected of murdering Eun-se. Jung-won explains that she did see Eun-se's body, but left the scene quickly due to a work call. Jung-won, now free, is welcomed with a warm hug from Woo Jae. Once they arrive home, Jung-won falls into a deep sleep, and when Woo Jae wakes her, she suddenly utters Taehan's name. Meanwhile, Soo Rin is now in police custody undergoing various investigative processes. During the interrogation, Taehan presents evidence in the form of Soo Rin's diary with bloodstains from the victim Myung-suk, which indicates that Soo Rin has a dark and horrifying secret. In addition to being the executor who killed her maid and Eun-se, Soo Rin also burned down the chemical factory, which caused Nari to become a victim. During the interrogation, Soo Rin cannot answer anything because she is so shaken that she nearly faints. After Soo Rin is captured, Yoon Young attempts to blackmail Mr. Mo, who is then planning to flee. However, Yoon Young threatens to expose all the crimes of the council member, which would greatly hinder his ambition to become president. Not long after, the council member is interviewed by the media, including Jung-won, who is also part of the interview team. At that moment, Jung-won says that Mr. Mo knew his daughter was guilty, but continued to cover up the crime. In front of the media, Jung-won presents evidence of a recorded conversation between Yoon Young and Soo Rin that reveals Yoon Young as the mastermind behind all the criminal events. She also reveals that Yoon Young is the one who influenced Soo Rin and instructed her to commit various crimes because Soo Rin and Yoon Young have been friends all along. Yoon Young also knows a dark secret about Mr. Mo's family. When Soo Rin was a teenager, she had a conflict with her mother and pushed her down the stairs, causing her to slip and become paralyzed. At that time, Yoon Young was a witness to the incident, and since then, she has been manipulating Soo Rin into committing heinous acts. With no other choice, Mr. Mo reveals that his daughter has poor mental health and has even attempted to do the unthinkable. Additionally, Mo also shows scars on his chest from being stabbed by her. Seeing the news about Mr. Mo's testimony that put him in a bad light, Yoon Young felt frustrated and desperately threw herself into a lake. At that moment, Yoon Young reflected on her past and all the crimes she had committed. It turned out that Yoon Young had been obsessed with Woo Jae, who never reciprocated her feelings. As a result, she was willing to do anything to be with him. Meanwhile, Taehan visited Soo Rin in detention, who denied the claims that she had stabbed her father. Taehan also informed her that he had been tracking Soo Rin at Woo Jae's request, who had received information from Yoon Young. As a result, Soo Rin felt betrayed because Yoon Young had deceived her. Not long after, when Jung-won arrives home, Yoon Young suddenly comes and injects her with a dangerous substance, causing her to collapse. In short, Yoon Young takes Jung-won to the top floor of a building, where she ties her up and connects her body with Jung-won, intending to carry out the unthinkable together. Yoon Young then recalled 3 years ago, before Woo Jae met Jung-won. He was the perfect man that made her obsessed with him. However, when Woo Jae, who had never wanted to marry, suddenly announced his plans to marry Jung-won, Yoon Young's feelings were shattered. As a result, she wanted to die and be remembered forever by Woo Jae, by doing the unthinkable alongside Jung-won. Yoon-young then calls Woo-jae and tells him that she is with Jung-won about to do the unthinkable together. If Woo-jae wants his wife to be saved, he is threatened not to report this to the police and must come alone, as she wants to torment Woo-jae with the death of his beloved wife. Meanwhile, the police are having difficulty locating Yoon-young, who has now been declared a fugitive. Because of this, Taehan asks Woo-jae to help in the search for Yoon-young, but he appears anxious because with his wife's situation. Taehan tries to locate Yoon-young at a bus terminal according to the tracking address, but she has changed her clothes to deceive the authorities. Not long after, Woo-jae arrives on the roof of a building, where he sees Jung-won tightly bound and connected with Yoon-young. At that moment, Yoon-young threatens to jump with Jung-won so that Woo-jae will always remember her. Before threatening to do the unthinkable, Yoon-young tells Jung-won that the real murderer of Eun-se is not Soo-rin, but her own husband. Additionally, there is a piece of evidence hidden in her favorite quote, which made Jung-won deeply contemplated with Yoon-young's words. Meanwhile, Taehan eventually located Yoon-young after tracking Woo-jae's whereabouts. Taehan then fired his weapon, causing Yoon-young to jump. Seeing this, Taehan made every effort to stop her, but it was too late as Yoon-young had already died. Fortunately, Jung-won was able to be saved. The next morning, while at home, Jung-won tries to find clues about what Yoon-young whispered before her death. Jung-won immediately searches for related evidence in her husband's room, but instead finds a divorce letter in Woo-jae's request to marry Yoon-young. When Woo-jae returns home, Jung-won tells him that she is willing to divorce and wants to live happily without causing each other distress. Jung-won also decides to leave the house and stay with Aina, her co-worker. Meanwhile, Mr. Mo is grabbing media attention by performing a public repentance for the owner of a shop, who is a relative of one of the murder victims due to his daughter's mistake. At that moment, Mr. Mo kneels in front of the shop for hours seeking forgiveness. At the police station, Soo-rin admits that her father is a monster who is also behind all the heinous acts. Soo-rin also reveals that during the fire at the chemical plant, Nari was not actually killed, but survived and could escape through a secret door. That evening, Jung-won meets with Taehan and asks for his help to obtain the video of Yoon-young's consultation sessions. Jung-won also tells Taehan that she is separated from her husband and wants to start a new life with him. Hearing this, Taehan agrees and eagerly anticipates the moment. The next day, Jung-won goes to the office to submit her resignation letter from the television station. She also gives some gifts to her friends as mementos. After that, Jung-won visits her father-in-law and tells him that she and her husband have divorced. As she leaves Mr. Punho's house, Jung-won almost faints and is taken to the hospital by Woo-jae. It turns out that Jung-won is pregnant, which made Woo-jae overjoyed by the news as he will become a father. At the same time, Jung-won is anxious and uncertain about the state of her unborn child. Initially, Jung-won wanted to have an abortion, but after thinking about it for days, she feels unable to do so. That evening, Taehan visits Aina's house to see Jung-won. However, Jung-won appears very tired and unwell. She also behaves coldly toward Taehan, making him wonder if he has made a mistake. During his visit, Taehan has brought the video recording Jung-won requested. Additionally, he also provides a photo of Barun, Jung-won's co-worker who is also Zeus, an illegal informant about Mr. Mo. From the photo, it was revealed that Barun is the younger brother of Nari, Woo-jae's former lover. The next morning, Jung-won opens the video file from Taehan, which contains a video of herself with Yoon-young during a consultation. In the video, Yoon-young mentions that she is very fond of Woo-jae's books because there is a quote from one of the books that closely resembles her words before ending her life. After watching it, Jung-won returns home to search for the book in question and finds a memory card hidden inside. The memory card contains a video of a man dressed in black and wearing a hat, repeatedly stabbing Eun-se. After that, Jung-won is left stunned because the knife used to kill Eun-se is the same one used by the perpetrator to stab her father. While Jung-won is focused on watching the video of the man in black who stabs Eun-se, Woo-jae suddenly arrives dressed in the same style, which shocks Jung-won greatly. Wu Jie says that he has always wanted to take a walk and see children because he will soon be a father. Wu Jie also remembers that day is the anniversary of Jung-won's father's death. Therefore, Wu Jie buys a variety of cheesecakes as requested by Jung-won. At that moment, Wu Jie promises that he will be a good father to their future child, as he has even bought many books on caring for a pregnant wife and preparing to be a father. Wu Jie also shares this good news with Mr. Punho, who is very happy. Additionally, Wu Jie is also ready to continue his father's business and will work hard for the future of his family. Wu Jie promises to erase the dark memories of the past to be happy with Jung-won. Moreover, Wu Jie even burns all his albums with Nari while crying and remembering the good times from high school. The next morning, Jung-won goes to Aina's house to meet Taehan, whom she has been avoiding. Taehan then reports that he has received information from a survivor of the chemical plant fire, who turns out not to be Nari, and it is said that she had exited the factory during the snowfall. As of now, Nari is missing, and her body has never been found. The DNA of the person burned in the factory at that time is unrecognizable, and it is confirmed not to be Nari. Hearing this, Jung-won informs Barun about this. Therefore, he provides information that Nari's death and Jung-won's father's death are connected, as both were killed by the same person. Barun also recalls that Jung-won's father died shortly after interviewing their family regarding Nari's death. On the other hand, Jung-won is plagued by indecision, as she is carrying Wu Jie's child, but she also wants to separate from him and live happily with Taehan. It turned out, Taehan always gives Jung-won attention and comforts her when she is hurt. Because of this, Jung-won can only cry beside her friend, feeling tormented by these feelings which make it difficult for her to make a choice. A few days later, Jung-won goes to a clinic to have an abortion, but she changes her mind upon remembering her own childhood, which lacked parental affection, and she does not want her child to suffer the same fate. At the same time, Wu Jie arrives at the clinic upon hearing that his wife wants an abortion. At that moment, Wu Jie cries, thinking he has lost their future child, but Jung-won says that the child can still be saved. Because of this, Wu Jie feels relieved, immediately apologizes to his wife, and promises to correct his mistakes. Afterward, Wu Jie visited Taehan at the police station to inform him not to hope for a future with Jung-won anymore, as she is now pregnant. As the result, Taehan was deeply affected by the news and requested to meet Jung-won to express his feelings. Taehan revealed that he truly did not want to lose her, but this time, Jung-won was determined to end their relationship to prioritize her child's future. Hearing this, Taehan became frustrated and decided to drink and cry all night. The next day, Taehan continues investigating Nari's case, where he finds an emergency call recording from the time of her death. In the recording, a teenage boy's voice is heard crying and asking for help because his friend had an accident. The recording also reached the ears of Mr. Mo, who has recently been campaigning. With this recording, Mr. Mo warns Mr. Punho to be more cautious, as the recording is closely related to him. It turns out that after the chemical plant was burned down, Mr. Punho developed the area into a luxury resort. They recall the past event when Mr. Punho's car was covered in blood on a snowy night, and shortly after, the factory was completely destroyed. To confirm if Wu Jie is the perpetrator behind his father's and Eun Se's murders, Jung-won visits the prison to see Su-rin. Jung-won then asks if Su-rin knows Wu Jie's whereabouts exactly 1 month before leaving for New York and on the day of his father's death. Su-rin does not remember anything, but can provide answers through a diary that was submitted to the police as evidence. Eventually, Jung-won asked the detective to photograph the writings in the diary, which reveal that Yoon Young visited Wu Jie and was in Seoul on January 10th. At the same time, Mr. Punho warns Wu Jie that the emergency call recording regarding Nari's death has been investigated by the police. This makes Wu Jie very anxious and reminds him of the time he hit Nari, leading to her death. At that time, his father and Mr. Mo, who was a prosecutor, covered up the case with money and power. That night, Wu Jie calls the emergency services center, but also contacts Mr. Punho, who asks Wu Jie to come home and promises to handle the matter in his own way. This reminder causes Wu Jie to be haunted by guilt, But this time, he tries to let go of all his past. Woo Jae then asks his father to continue hiding the issues from Nari's death to Eun-se's. Woo Jae also promises to cover up his crimes by any means so that his child will not be known as the son of a criminal. It turned out, Woo Jae becomes increasingly frustrated as his crimes continue to accumulate while he tries to cover one crime with another. Eventually, Woo Jae kills Eun-se because she overheard him ranting about Nari's death. The next morning, Jung-won goes to Moyon City to dig up information about Woo Jae, Nari, and their connection to her father's death. In the same city, Woo Jae and his team are holding a business meeting for the Moojin Group. After the event, Woo Jae's father has a meeting with Mr. Mo, who threaten each other to reveal their dark secrets for their own gain. At that moment, Mr. Mo threatens to release a recording of Woo Jae appearing terrified after hitting Nari, while Mr. Punho threatens to reveal that the chest wound on Mr. Mo was not caused by Soo Rin. At the same time, news of Jung-won's pregnancy has become a national trending topic. At the police station, Taehan is increasingly convinced by the evidence that Woo Jae is the perpetrator who killed Nari. Meanwhile, every January 10th, an event is held to commemorate the day of the Bonto chemical plant fire, where Barun attends the event to remember his sister. At the event, Barun sees Woo Jae attending to commemorate the death of the victims. Therefore, he follows Woo Jae to a hill. There, Woo Jae mourns over a mound of dirt and pours banana yogurt on it, which made Barun remembers that his sister loved that drink. With this founding, Barun is convinced that Nari has been buried there. That night, Barun attempted to dig at the spot where Woo Jae had poured his drink earlier in the day. He continued to dig in several places until he eventually uncovered Nari's skeleton. However, he was suddenly strangled to death by someone dressed in black. Upon hearing the news, Taehan rushes to the scene and suspects that the perpetrator is Woo Jae, who doesn't want Nari's identity revealed. Therefore killed Barun, who had discovered his sister's skeleton. Taehan becomes even more certain of his suspicion after learning that Woo Jae was in Moyon City. At the same time, Jung-won, who is passing by the area, sees Taehan and is shocked to hear that Barun has died, as Jung-won always seen Barun like a younger brother. She also hears that a female skeleton was found alongside Barun's body, confirmed to be Nari's. The next morning, Jung-won visits her husband's hotel room to confirm that Woo Jae is not the perpetrator of her father's and the other victims' deaths. Jung-won also asks Woo Jae where he was on January 10th. Woo Jae then replies that he was hospitalized for mental health issues. However, Jung-won needs clarification, so she calls the doctor who treated her husband at that time. Jung-won also asks Woo Jae where he was before Barun's death. Eventually, Jung-won and her husband review the hotel's CCTV footage and confirm that he was at the bar at that time. Hearing this, Jung-won feels somewhat relieved and believes that her husband is not the perpetrator. Shortly after, Jung-won also wants to be taken to the hill where Barun was killed and Nari's skeleton was found. Woo Jae agrees to take her, but they must be accompanied by Taehan, the detective handling the case. The three of them also check the CCTV around the mountain to determine who was there before Barun was killed. Unfortunately, the CCTV turns out to be damaged. While Jung-won is in the restroom, Taehan shows a CCTV video from around the hill showing a man in all black arriving before Barun was killed. Despite Taehan revealing various alibis, Woo Jae continues to deny them. Taehan also shows a recording of Woo Jae crying in fear, but he immediately explains that the one who hit Nari was his father's driver, and the issue was resolved through family channels. From this information, Taehan becomes even more enraged and disbelieving of Woo Jae, determined to prove the truth and not let him get away. When the three of them came down from the mountain, Jung-won explained to Taehan that the person who killed Eun-se and the person who killed her father were the same person, because she recognized the knife used to stab both victims. When Taehan saw the knife, he remembered who the owner was, and it turned out to be a senior police officer who was also Mr. Punho's trusted colleague. On the other hand, Woo Jae is extremely frustrated after discovering the series of crimes committed by his father, which made Woo Jae cannot stop drinking alcohol in excessive amounts. It turns out that it was his father who ordered Mr. Gong, the person in black, to execute Eun-se and also to kill Jung-won's father. Additionally, Mr. Gong was also the one known to have killed Barun when they were on the hill. Unexpectedly, the reason Mr. Punho did all of this was to protect Wu Jie because he did not want any scandal involving his son. Additionally, the reason Mr. Punho killed Unsei was also revealed. Apparently, the day before her death, Unsei had threatened Mr. Punho that she would expose a fatal accident involving Wu Jie if he did not approve of her relationship with Wu Jie. Additionally, Wu Jie is now heavily burdened and finds it hard to believe that his father could make Jungwon, the child of the person he killed, as his daughter-in-law. Mr. Punho then explains the reason why he killed Jungwon's father. At that time, he was developing a resort in Moyon City, while Jungwon's father was investigating a bribery and corruption case related to the resort's development. Unexpectedly, Jungwon's father continually followed Mr. Punho and extorted him, using evidence from an incident where Wu Jie had assaulted Nari. Eventually, Mr. Punho decided to eliminate him. Upon hearing this, Wu Jie feels unable to face Jungwon, but Mr. Punho insists that Wu Jie must continue living with her, because he will not allow his grandson to bear the name of being the child of a criminal. On the other hand, Taehan intensifies his investigation into Mr. Gong. Initially, Taehan is reluctant to accept the reality that someone he highly respected turned out to be a hitman. Therefore, he starts to monitor Mr. Punho's house and tracks Mr. Gong's activities. Taehan also visits Mr. Gong's younger sister, who is reportedly suffering from a rare disease in a hospital. At that moment, Mr. Gong's sister explains that since she fell ill in 2009, her brother struggled to pay the very high medical costs. Eventually, Mr. Gong decided to quit being a police officer and dedicated himself to serving a wealthy family. Thanks to that family, she has been able to receive treatment to this day. With this information, Taehan is initially hesitant to arrest Mr. Gong, but he cannot shirk his duty as a law enforcer. Eventually, Taehan recalls when he was young, Mr. Gong was the one who constantly motivated him to become a detective. Meanwhile, Jungwon also investigates her husband's family in connection with her father's death. It turns out, Jungwon receives information from a man named Mr. Han that her father once traveled to Moyon City to investigate corruption related to the Mujin Resort. Additionally, Mr. Han also mentions that her Mr. Punho and Mr. Mo were longtime business partners, with Mr. Mo as one of the largest shareholders in the company. With this information, Jungwon concludes that her father was killed by Mr. Punho because he was investigating the case. On the other hand, Mr. Mo is planning to expose Wu Jie's hit-and-run incident to the public and intends to pressure Mr. Punho into giving up 50% of his shares. It was revealed that Mr. Mo plans to use this to facilitate his upcoming presidential campaign. Therefore, Mr. Mo also plans to use Taehan as a tool to further his plan, given that he is known to be investigating Mr. Gong's case. The next day, Mr. Punho invites Jungwon to his house. At that moment, he asks Jungwon to remain his daughter-in-law and not to separate from Wu Jie. Unexpectedly, his words also carry a threatening tone, leading Jungwon to agree to move back in with Wu Jie. Apparently, Jungwon agrees because she plans to search for evidence and documents related to the case surrounding the establishment of the Mujin Resort, which is closely connected to her father's death. With the help of Mr. Han, Jungwon meets a reporter who is knowledgeable about the chemical plant fire and the establishment of the Mujin Resort. It is said that the fire was caused intentionally, as when the firefighter was dispatched, their truck was obstructed by an overturned car, causing severe traffic congestion. The firefighters were delayed in extinguishing the flames, and the plant was ultimately destroyed. The next morning, Jungwon arrives at her in-law's house, while Taehan, who is monitoring Mr. Punho's residence, is curious why Jungwon is carrying such a large suitcase to her in-law's home. It turned out, Jungwon pretends to bring a bouquet of flowers to be placed in her father-in-law's study. She does this to search for information and documents related to the corruption case involving the resort's construction. However, Jungwon is caught, and Mr. Punho warns her that he knows about her plan and her reasons for agreeing to stay. That night, Taehan continues his investigation into Mr. Gong. Therefore, he follows him to a fishing pond. Taehan then asks Mr. Gong to confess his crimes, but he threatens him instead, saying that if Taehan continues like this, he will eventually regret it. At that moment, Taehan tries to search Mr. Gong for a tornado-pattern knife that seems to be used in executing the victims. Because of this, they become involved in a fierce struggle, and Taehan almost falls into the pond, while Mr. Gong, losing control, accidentally stabs Taehan in the abdomen. Seeing this, Mr. Gong rushes away from the fishing pond, but Taehan refuses to give up, injuring Mr. Gong in the leg to prevent his escape and to buy time until the police arrive. Shortly after, a colleague arrived and immediately contacts an ambulance, while two other officers pursue Mr. Gong, who has fled into a forest area. During his run, Mr. Gong is seen enduring pain from the stab wound in his leg, before contacts Mr. Punho and says that Taehan knows about their crimes, therefore he will hide until things are safe. When brought to the emergency room, Taehan recalls his cherished moments with Jung-won, whom he loves deeply, until he eventually loses consciousness. Meanwhile, Jung-won confronts Mr. Punho and accuses Mr. Gong of killing her father, as he had witnessed the incident firsthand. Jung-won also reveals all of her father-in-law's deeds, but Mr. Punho denies it. He claims that at the time of the chemical plant fire, Mr. Gong was still working under the orders of Mr. Mo and had not yet become his enforcer. When Jung-won leaves, Woo-jae has a private conversation with his father. Woo-jae is disappointed with his father's ongoing denial in front of Jung-won, but Mr. Punho argues that in this world, those with power are the ones who win. Because of this, Mr. Punho also hopes that Woo-jae will make the right life choices with his family, so that he does not end up being oppressed. Learning that Taehan is injured, Jung-won visits him in the hospital. At that moment, Woo-jae, who is following her, can only suppress his jealousy, as his pregnant wife is still seeing another man. Jung-won is relieved to learn that Taehan is not seriously injured, as she cannot imagine how devastated her life would be if she lost Taehan, while he also promises never to leave her. After that, Taehan reveals that he had previously installed a tracker on the knife that wounded Mr. Gong. Because of this, Mr. Gong is eventually captured at his hideout after the police manage to track him down. A few days later, after recovering and returning from the hospital, Taehan interrogates Mr. Gong, who finally admits all his crimes but continues to cover up Mr. Punho's involvement. Jung-won also feels frustrated upon hearing the confession, so she vows that Mr. Gong will never see the face of his loved ones again, as he deserves to rot in prison for his lifetime. Some time later, Woo-jae finally agrees to divorce Jung-won, as he does not want to continue causing her suffering. A few days later, Jung-won discovers a video recording left by her father. The video shows Woo-jae hitting Nari with a car, leading to her death. Knowing this, Jung-won tries to confirm this with Woo-jae and demands that he reveal the case and the mastermind behind it, who is none other than Mr. Punho. At that moment, Woo-jae can only cry and apologize for his past actions that also implicated his wife. Additionally, Woo-jae also admits he is ready to face severe punishment if necessary. The next day, Mr. Punho is attending an awards ceremony as his company has been named the best company of the year. Unexpectedly, when Woo-jae is asked to give a speech on behalf of his father, he makes a shocking confession. Woo-jae admits to being a murderer 15 years ago and that his father tried to cover up the incident with various other crimes, as he tried to protect him from legal consequences. Woo-jae also confesses that it was his father who buried Nari's body that night. Because of this, Mr. Punho feels cornered, especially when Woo-jae demands he confess in front of a crowd and cameras that are continuously recording. Mr. Punho hastily leaves to avoid the press's questions, while Woo-jae is arrested by Taehan for violating traffic laws. At that moment, Jung-won can only resign herself as her husband is taken to the police station. Not long after, behind bars, Woo-jae asks Jung-won to broadcast the hit-and-run video on her TV program, as he wants his father to admit his guilt so that Mr. Punho cannot create new alibis with more crimes. Although the program had been temporarily suspended, Jung-won receives permission from her superiors to air the video. At the same time, Jung-won also hopes the public will monitor the case to ensure the investigation proceeds impartially. Eventually, Mr. Punho responds to the police summons, and many protesters demand his arrest and the reopening of the long-standing case. Unexpectedly, Mr. Mo is also questioned because his fingerprints were found on the car's headlights used to hit Nari. From another evidence, Mr. Mo is also found to have manipulated investigation records regarding the car accident that obstructed the firefighters when a chemical plant caught fire. Sometime later, Jung-won meets Woo-jae, from whom he is about to get divorced. At that moment, Woo-jae can only hope that she can live freely and happily without any further problems from his past. Jung-won also expresses that she has never regretted meeting Woo-jae, as they have shared happy moments together, and Woo-jae even gave her the greatest gift, which is their unborn child. Therefore, Jung-won promises to visit Woo-jae again after their child is born. That night, Jung-won visits Taehan to say goodbye, as she will be leaving Seoul the next day, and more specifically, leaving Taehan. Jung-won wants them to part ways because Taehan deserves to be happy without her. After that, Jung-won will start a new life and raise her child well. As the result, they can only lament their separation, though Taehan is determined to continue thinking about Jung-won and will wait for her forever. 3 years later, Jung-won has a beautiful daughter named Miso and now lives on Jeju Island. Jung-won is also still working as a reporter while raising her daughter. After a long trial process, Mr. Pun-ho is declared not guilty of various murder conspiracies involving several victims. While in detention, Woo-jae writes a message to his father, urging him to stop committing crimes. For now, Woo-jae only hopes to be released soon and to be with his daughter, who is growing into an adorable child. Every few months, Jung-won goes to Seoul with her daughter to visit Woo-jae. In fact, Jung-won also received an offer from her old TV station to rejoin, giving the fans of the show Nothing Uncovered who miss her presence. While still in Seoul, Jung-won also stops by Taehan's workplace, but she lacks the courage to contact him first. Although Taehan has always sent her messages, Jung-won has never replied to any of them. That night, Taehan sends a message saying he is at a favorite spot where they used to go camping together. However, Jung-won is not interested in meeting Taehan. Sometime later, they are reunited when Jung-won suddenly learns that Taehan has been injured while on duty. At that moment, her feelings of love and fear of losing the man she loves can no longer be hidden. Therefore, they both eventually agree to rekindle their relationship and love each other. With this, the series comes to an end. Moral lesson from the story: trying to cover up a big mistake is like hiding a dinosaur in your closet. Eventually, everyone will notice. Remember, honesty is less messy than dealing with a prehistoric problem.